This is Sam Long.
I'm Ron Peters.
And I'm John Newton.
Welcome to the After Class Podcast.
Because the best conversations happen
After class.
Thanks for joining us. Another episode of the After Class Podcast. We're glad to have you along. We are excited. We have big news.
Big news.
I turn it over to John for the big news.
Oh, that's how we're doing this? Okay.
I wouldn't want to steal thunder.
So I am now a grandfather.
Woohoo! Grandpa John.
No, we don't have kazoos or anything.
I know.
But
it felt kind of not perfect.
we didn't have it when we announced your grandfatherhood last week.
Right. And I'm a grandfather like 4 times over, and 6 if you count
So no
the
kazoos needed.
2 that married in. So this is like old school for me.
Yeah.
This is brand new for you.
Yeah.
This is really cool.
Yep.
How's grandfatherhood feel to you?
One day in.
I've held my grandson 3 times, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
It's just fun walking around, singing to him and talking to him and having him. It's great when they hold your
Yeah,
finger.
the
They
little-
wrap their whole
Right.
fist around the tip of your finger.
Yep.
And it's just it's precious. But my daughter Sierra and her husband Christian had a baby boy. His name is Shepherd Philip Baker, and the Philip, the middle name is in honor of the great grandfather Philip Beavers,
One of our VPs.
who is one of the VPs at Great Lakes. He's been serving Great Lakes for 25
Yep.
years. Just announced his retirement
Yeah.
after this year, after 25 years of service, and so it was really cool for him to be honored that way. And I actually got to be in the room when Phil was told, and he
Pretty-
blushed and
I'm
turned
sure he
away.
did.
He's just overwhelmed with feelings of appreciation and honor. And so it's been a tough delivery, a tough process. Nothing came easy, but the baby's really healthy and mom's recovering. And and we're fortunate that they live pretty close, so we were able to be in the hospital. My wife and youngest daughter was able to be in the room. Alyssa is a doula, so she was able to be there with some level of expertise, which I think probably helped make the process a little bit more smooth.
Yeah.
And so just each day we keep going over there and keep spending time and loving it, loving every minute of it.
Oh yeah. I think about my newest granddaughter. It was it's funny for the listener. They heard me announce my new granddaughter last week, but that was recorded like 3 weeks ago.
Right.
So she's been around for
Back-to-back grandchildren episodes, except not in time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I've been over to my daughter's house now several times, and I love holding on to her because I lift her up and put her on my shoulder, and if I lay her on her belly, she curls her legs up underneath her,
Yeah.
and she's kind of laying on her arm with her head to the side, and it's so adorable. It's so cute. And it's been 7 years since I've had a grandbaby, and so
wow.
it's like I'm starting all over again. And man, just loving it. So we can share our grandpa stories.
Yeah. God is good.
Amen.
Agree,
And, we're
absolutely.
just really grateful. And it all begins with love
Okay.
between a man and a woman.
Nice,
No.
well played.
Wh-
No,
what?
I thought it was good. I'll give him credit for that.
All right.
As my segue back to our text, the Song of Songs.
Speaking of how we get to
Maybe it's
babies,
because I knew where you were going. Speaking of how we get babies.
how we get to babies.
Oh, okay. Well, the stork.
It's all connected.
I thought it was like the Cabbage Patch. You find
Amen. Speaking of Valentine's Day, which this episode will be going out somewhere around there. I
That's
guess.
true.
Yeah.
It's very
Semi-close,
timely.
right?
It's going to be instructions on
Okay.
how a man ought to show his fondness for his woman.
Yes,
Yes.
today is definitely about that.
Yep.
We're in chapter 4, and it turns to the male extolling the virtues of his beloved woman. So I guess we'll just read it and talk about it, right?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
We're going to read, I guess, the first 8 verses to start with, and we'll go from there. And unfortunately, I get to have the male voice for once and not the female voice, so that'll be exciting for me. How beautiful you are, my love. How very beautiful. Your eyes are doves behind the veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats moving down the slopes of Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of shorn ewes that have come up from the washing, all of which bear twins, and not one among them is bereaved. Your lips are like a crimson thread, and your mouth is lovely. Your cheeks are like halves of a pomegranate behind your veil. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built in courses. On it hang 1,000 bucklers, all of them shields of warriors. Your 2 breasts are like 2 fawns, twins of a gazelle, that feed among the lilies. Until the day breeze and the shadows flee, I will hasten to the mountains of myrrh and the hill of frankincense. You are altogether beautiful, my love. There's no flaw in you. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Come with me from Lebanon. Depart from the peak of Amana, from the peak of Senir and Hermon, from the dens of lions, from the mountains of leopards.
You can tell it's an agrarian society.
You think?
By the various comparisons they make, the metaphors or whatever you want to say. It's obviously stuff that makes sense to them. For probably a lot of our listeners, they're like, this is not lovely stuff. Like, there are probably women out there going, if you compared me to these things, I would not be flattered. But for them, this is just part of their everyday life. And so farmers, agrarian cultures, yeah, I think it makes perfect sense to them.
Yeah, things that are very familiar to them that they're referencing. I mean, we can think of modern things to be, you are like the newest iPhone, perfect, perfect in function, and whatever it might be. And like, that's not a great thing to say about a person, but like, you get the point.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, apparently the woman was not offended by being compared to a sheep or a tower or whatever else.
Exactly.
Yeah, the tower is what kind of stands out.
It does.
Like a Tower of David is one of the least agrarian images.
Right. Yeah. But again, these are things that they're going to see around them. Again, it's just like, what, as you're walking down the road, and it might even be off at a distance, but what are just the common things that strike awe? Like, a tower might not be beautiful, but at least in this time period, to build something like that is quite an engineering feat. And so when people see it, they're like, oh, wow, that's just really cool. And so there's that sense of wonder that associates that image.
Yeah, and they still draw awe when you go to a big city.
Mhm.
You just stare at you're looking for the biggest tower. You know, whenever I go to the New York City, I want to see the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then think, man, look at that neck.
And then I look at my wife.
You are so like the Empire State Building.
So let's unpack some of these images that where the meaning is not self-evident. I think we noticed in verse 1. I think pre-show when we were chatting, we have the notion of a veil shows up, right?
Yeah.
And her eyes are doves behind her veil. And earlier we had questions about she wanted to be special. She didn't want to be like the women who are veiled among the men. But here she's still veiled.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, what do you think that suggests about the status of their relationship?
I mean, if she's still veiled, it seems like they're still in like the early courtship part of their relationship. They're not married yet or anything like that. So she kind of is like one of the other women. She's just saying, I don't want to be like that. I want our relationship to be different. We just haven't progressed to that point yet.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Middle Eastern culture. It seems like there's something in my mind where you're veiled until you're married, and then you can become unveiled, but that may not be actually true. So,
Yeah.
like what you're saying is, well, if she's veiled and then she's still not married, but that would change. I don't know if that's actually like a cultural thing.
Could she
right?
be unveiled for him? Like, even at this
Right.
point, like, you don't even get to see me without my veil on. I want us to get to the point where when we're together, I can take off my veil and you can see me, in my fullness.
Possibly. Although in verse 3, it says, your cheeks are like halves of a pomegranate behind your veil. How would he know unless he's seen her face?
I mean, it depends on how much the veil
Correct.
is covering.
Is it
I
the
mean,
full
maybe-
burqa? Is it?
Yeah. Like, do her cheeks stick
here's
up
my
above it?
theory about this.
All right, lay it on us.
Because this, I mean, when I think pomegranate, I think this kind of rounded fruit,
Yes.
right? But you cut open a pomegranate and you see these tiny little seeds,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And lots of tiny little seeds.
Mhm.
And so if she's wearing a veil and the light pierces through, the pattern on her face is like the tiny little seeds inside a pomegranate.
No, that's kind of interesting.
So the veiled look could, contribute to the meaning of the pomegranate here.
That assumes a lacy type veil as opposed to a full cloth veil.
Which
Yes.
it could be.
You're right.
Right.
It isn't
Yeah.
necessarily that.
Yeah. So if it is a lacy veil, then sure. But if it's not, then it doesn't work. There's no light is getting through.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting picture, though, at the very least.
Yeah, because I'm just having a hard time seeing cheeks look like pomegranates unless something is wrong. Like
Like
the hard
rosy,
shell.
like rosy, and like
Got the
like,
mumps going on there.
no, like big cheeks that are rosy. I don't know.
Yeah, colorful. It could be a sign of a strong, prominent color.
It could be. Who knows?
Yeah, but so anyway, just the pomegranate is not necessarily incompatible with a veil.
Right.
Yeah.
You can go different directions with that.
It's still funny though, because again, this is how I'm describing your beauty, how the man is describing her beauty. And it works. Again, this is something that at the time this was written, people are like, oh my gosh, she's so hot. Her cheeks are like pomegranates. It just makes perfect sense to them, where we have to try to figure it out. That's what makes it funny.
Yeah. I really like the image of the hair is like a flock of goats moving down the slopes.
Yeah.
It's just, that's a cool thing to watch, right? Just a flock of, goats going down. You see, sometimes you see movies that have these stampedes and these large groups of animals working up and down the hills. It's just an impressive sight.
Yeah.
And it does conjure up what nice flowing hair would look like.
Yeah, and it's like a thick, wavy hair. It's not like thin or whatever. Like a really thick head of hair. Like you said, curls or waves in it. So
There's a lot of movement.
I can't help. There's a Seinfeld episode where
right.
George is asking, thick hair? He goes, how thick do you want it? She goes, you put my hand through? Like, do you want your hand to get your stuck? No. Like how thick her hair actually is. Oh, that's what I thought of when you were talking about that.
But my hand gets stuck in her hair.
Like, do you want it to? No. Oh, that's so good. I also think of like, there's that like classic modern picture of a woman like coming up out of the beach and like shaking her head and like the hair like spinning around like in slow motion. Like that's sort of, for me, that's like a modern version of what this would be like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the ewes going down the side of the the side of the mountain.
Well, and here, this takes me back to like the veil though. Like, if women are covering themselves, how does he know what her hair looks like? How much of her is really covered up? Is her hair exposed so that he can see all of it and it's like cascading down her shoulders? It's just a different way of how different cultures express modesty and all of that.
Well, for me, there's this constant flirting with what does he know and what should he know and you know what I mean? Like, if I'm envisioning a full burqa, he's not seeing hair, he's not seeing cheeks, he's not seeing teeth, he's not seeing any of the stuff that he's describing.
Yeah.
So it's either not that or he's like, I don't know.
I get the sense they've spent quality time together. I mean, at least, right? Previous chapters have them in this like lush, verdant, green getaway. Like,
kind of snuck off.
He's
together.
seen her without the veil.
Yeah.
It just seems other parts of the
right.
So, but one of the themes is together, apart, apart.
Yeah.
See you, not able to see you, and so I think like the imagery goes back and forth.
Close to consummating, but not right. And yeah.
So now they're walking down the street. He knows it's her, but now she's got the veil on. He's like, I know what your hair looks like. I've seen it.
I know your teeth. They look like ewes.
That's like because that's the next one, right? How beautiful her teeth are. And I said it when we were getting ready. I remember studying this way back in like the 90s when I was taking Bible survey with Paul Kissling. And we're working through this. And I remember Paul just starting to crack up because, how each one of them bears her twins. Not one among them is bereaved. He's just like, she's got all her teeth. It's like, well, I guess once upon a time, people without dental care, people are losing their teeth all the time. And so the fact that she hasn't lost any of her teeth is part of what makes her beautiful.
Yeah. And probably part of her youth. Like the longer they advance in years without medical treatment and dental services, the more likely you are to begin losing your teeth. And it's a sign of her youth, and she's at the peak of her beauty.
Yeah. And like physical vigor, you're young, you're strong, all your teeth are in your mouth. So it speaks, I agree with you. It speaks about her age and her, it just sounds so weird to say, but her health, healthy woman.
All right. So 3-1, your lips are like crimson thread and your mouth is lovely. Why do you suppose crimson thread? I don't think of lips, and I don't move from lips to string.
It's a good question. I mean, the crimson part makes sense, red lips, but a thread is something really thin. When I think of a thread, I think of something really, really thin.
So no lip fillers?
No fillers or like, full
pouty
lips.
Not that.
It's like the opposite of that.
Yes.
Yeah, and I wondered as I was thinking about this, like, is red a color they would see a lot, especially in that part of the world?
Probably
right? Like,
not.
Where do we see red a lot? It's usually in graphics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we see things like hearts, but they don't see hearts drawn, colored in red. They don't see stop signs all the time.
They're not dotting their little eyes with
and
hearts.
so it may be that thread that presumably they've dyed and stuff like that is maybe some of the brightest versions of red they see on a regular basis.
Okay. That would make sense.
So what else in their natural world experience? That maybe an apple,
Yeah, I
The
was gonna say,
pomegranate is reddish.
yeah, you're going to see in
maroonish red.
vegetation.
but they already used up the pomegranate, so they
They
had to
did
move
already
to
use
something
that.
else.
Use that. Right.
Actually, yeah, that comes later in the same verse.
Right. So yeah, again, it's kind of strange. Trying to locate it is difficult.
So it may
You
not
might be right.
it may not have to do with the thin. We think thread, we think something thin.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
what you floss your teeth with. Not what we compare your lips to.
Right. Yeah.
But for them, if it's one of the reddest things in their cultural experience,
Okay.
then it might be the color of crimson thread that's more the emphasis here than the texture and the girth.
Right. Yeah. The girth of your lips.
You're looking up something, Sam. Right?
Yeah,
You're
I'm looking at the
finding-
Hebrew, and just so it means scarlet or crimson, but they also say it comes perhaps from an insect, that the dried body of the female yielding coloring matter from which is made the dye used for cloth to color it scarlet or crimson.
Yeah.
Your lips are like a dead insect.
And that insect,
That's
exactly.
pooping out redness. I don't think that's what they had in mind. But
And so maybe it's not the thread. It's fabric, red
yes,
fabric.
that is yes.
that they're
Okay.
in their experience they see red clothing. They don't necessarily see red other things.
Right.
Besides maybe some kinds of fruit.
Or blood.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Yeah.
But you don't want to describe.
You
Well,
you wouldn't think
Maybe you
so.
do. I don't know.
Yeah.
They use other images here, so who knows what people think is really beautiful.
All right. So the neck like a tower of David. Assuming we're done with the pomegranate.
I think we got the gist of that.
We did that one.
So a long neck,
Yep.
Seems like it.
an
Yeah.
attractive feature.
Yeah. It reminds me of like in certain like African cultures where
Oh, like,
they literally put rings to like elongate their necks.
Yep.
And I don't think that's what's happening here necessarily,
right.
but on some level, like she's not like that workout guy who has no neck.
Well, and you
Right.
see that in like ancient Egyptian, busts
Right.
where these beautiful women have really elongated necks. And so there's something about the long neck that is, I guess, for them, an attractive quality.
Yeah, if I had done any research, I mean, we probably could find in Egyptian parallels of these love poetries, probably descriptions of necks like this.
Yeah.
I would assume.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Again, you don't have to look too hard to see evidence of it from, thousands of years ago that we found in Egyptian tombs. So it does make sense.
And long necks are still an attractive feature today.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying we're any
And we're not talking giraffe here.
No, we're not going down that road. But, a little bit
We're talking a
longer.
Davidic tower, not a giraffe.
Fair enough.
Yes. But we have it. One of the nice things about long necks is lots of room for bling.
That's right. And evidently she does.
Yeah, 1,000 bucklers, all of them shields of warriors. And so this, I guess it's a kind of necklace, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's got like the round pendants on it. And you see those kind of necklaces are just made up of these round pendants that go all the way around. And
Yeah, pendants or shells or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
attached together like on a chain.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And then we move on to the breasts.
Yes, which get quite a bit of attention here. But, I think this is part of what he's saying. Like, I'm going to extol every part of you that is beautiful to me. And so he's kind of working his way from the top down. It's like the next thing I come to, you have beautiful breasts. They're like two fawns, twins of a gazelle that feed up among the lilies.
Yeah, and presumably he's not talking about shape and activity level, right?
Right.
But he's talking about like, this is a beautiful sight, like to see fawns among the lilies.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful thing. It's just a quiet, serene, peaceful view. To get to see that and take that in is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way her breasts are to him. It's just
Yeah.
a wonderful sight to behold.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is kind of a weird switch because before he was definitely making comparisons to the thing and the body part.
Yeah.
Like actual physical representations, where that doesn't seem to be the case here because we're not sure how to reconcile that if it is.
Yeah.
So it is kind of an interesting switch of what he's doing, like how he's using the metaphor.
Yeah. And I think thread moves us in that direction too, right?
Yeah,
like
that's fair.
You can't push the shape into it in a kind of literal way,
Right.
but there's something about this that captures it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you see that, you're just kind of wowed by it. If you see these gazelles, you're like, "Oh, wow, that is just so beautiful." And so it's comparable in the sense of like the appreciation or the wonder that you feel in the moment.
But the next verse may be getting more to shape. Right?
Yeah.
Verse 6 follows right on the heels of verse 5. Until the day breathes and the shadows flee, I will hasten to the mountain of myrrh and the hill of frankincense.
Mhm.
And so obviously mountains have long been compared to breasts.
Yep.
And earlier we have a satchel hanging between her breasts,
Mhm.
and it was filled with myrrh.
Mhm.
Right? Was that in the
Or
last
nard,
chapter?
or
Nard?
yes,
Oh,
the
yeah, it was
nard
nard.
one, right?
Right?
Whatever
Okay.
it is, it's a
fragrant
fragrant thing. Yes.
Yeah.
It's chapter 1, I think, all the way back. Yeah, and so is this a callback to that, where like he's gonna go to the mountain where the myrrh is? Of course, the mountains are, of course, her breasts there in chapter 1. It seems like that's what's going on, especially if he continues the idea from verse 5.
Yeah.
I'll also say, this is an aside for anyone who cares, probably not many, but like a lot of times we call upon El Shaddai, which is like God of the mountains, and in cognate languages, that Shaddai word also means breasts. So like you said, for a long time people have looked at mountains and said, oh, that kind of reminds me of breasts.
Yeah.
And so that could easily be a intentional comparison here.
Well, and I wonder too if like for at least modern Americans, there's a little bit of discomfort talking about breasts, because it's like, women cover them up unless you're a Hollywood elite and you go as far as you can to expose as much as you can at a party or whatever. But in the ancient world, there's a pretty good chance that at any given day you can see a mom feeding her child. Like this, it's probably not as sensitive of a topic for them, just because you probably see them more often than nowadays. It's just like, it's just an affectation. It's how we feed our babies. So maybe, for him to draw attention to that wouldn't have been any different than drawing attention to, her cheeks or her
Right.
teeth or whatever.
Yeah. And we have something's going on here in terms of them being together, because he says until the day breathes and the shadows flee. And so this is like until sunrise,
Yeah.
right? Until the day begins and the sun dispels the shadows, right? And everything is visible. He is hastening to her, to her body, to her breast, right? And so this seems to be, they're just kind of hanging out in the night again.
Yeah.
Right. There's like night after night, he's hastening to be with her body.
Mhm.
And it is kind of interesting. I mean, you were kind of working down her head. He stops here. Like the description
Right,
of the
yeah.
body stops at the breast. And it's going to return later on in the poem, but he's going to be back to the lips. So he's going back up again. And so
Yeah.
this is, for his description, this is the high point.
Yeah.
And he's described her bust, right?
Yeah.
The upper part of her body, and it's beautiful. And from here, he goes on to this invitation to be together, maybe in a longer term basis, right? He says, it kind of culminates after this in verse 7, you are altogether beautiful. There is no flaw in you. Like he stopped his description, like your whole body is beautiful. And then says, come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Come with me from Lebanon. Depart from the peaks of these various mountains where the lions are and the leopards. So there's this invitation to join him, maybe on a long-term basis. Like they've flee to this place, they have intimacy in this place, but now maybe he wants something more permanent, which reminds me of her earlier saying, I want to take you home to my house, to be with the house of my mother.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like him reciprocating, wanting her to come and be with him.
It's funny, kind of going back a little bit too. You talk about how he gets to a certain point, physically and stops. I know I keep going back to Egypt stuff, but it evokes images in my mind of a lot of like Egyptian tombs where women will be depicted, and it's very common for like women to be depicted topless or like with a breast exposed or something like that. Again, suggesting that maybe in that culture it just wasn't considered inappropriate. It's not like pornography or something like that. It's like this is just normally what you see walking down, like if you're walking out at the beach or whatever. And so he might be describing something that, again, you would see that, like, and like he stops at a certain point, like you don't go lower than that because anything lower is now considered like inappropriate. But I can extol everything that I'm accustomed to seeing on you.
Yeah, again, for me, this is what makes the song so fascinating. It's a conservative culture, but there's certain things that are not taboo.
Right.
like it's just this weird sort of balance between the two, right? A conservative culture, but we're going to talk about breasts, but not any further than that. But that's okay. Anyway, it's just what's okay and what's not okay. It's fascinating.
What counts as conservative?
Right.
What is conservative to us? They're like, that's just weird. But for us, it's the other way
Exactly.
around.
Yeah, we might say a word about the location of these mountains where he wants her to come from. And these are all near Lebanon, so north of Israel, right, more toward the coast, probably. And, that stands out in this passage. But that's not the only place, right, in the poem. In 1:5, he talks about, the tents of Kedar, which is Arabia. In 1:12, he talks about En-Gedi, which is the west coast of the Dead Sea. In 2:1, he talks about the plains of Sharon, which is between Joppa and Caesarea. 4:1 is talking about Gilead, north of Ammon, on the other side of the Jordan River. And, of course, you have these daughters of Jerusalem.
Right.
And so they don't seem to be committed to one place.
Right.
Right. The imagery is kind of dancing around Palestine in various places. But the north seems to be a special place where they gather. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, it is weird how he does name all these places, but here he makes it clear, like, come with me from Lebanon, as though she's in, like, northern Israel, Syria. Like, that's different than the other places. Like, he can use those as references, but, like, let's get out of here and come back down to where I'm at, which I guess would be Jerusalem or that area.
But does it have anything to do with, like, you think of, like, Tyre and Sidon being these, very advanced cities, culturally, technologically, wealthy type cities? Is he thinking in those terms, associating her with these great places? Like, if we want to go on vacation, do we go north into Lebanon to go to one of these cool cities? That's a little bit of an anachronism, but I'm just wondering if that maybe plays a part of it, how they're viewed.
Yeah, the water supply there is so much better. I mean, that's where you get the really tall trees and the colorful trees and the fragrant trees. It had to be like going up north.
Yeah.
To the really nice place, like resort land almost.
It does seem like it was lusher, because I mean that's the mountains sort of scope, like they go downward. It's less hilly, but there are mountains, right? It's less like, and they actually had things grow, whereas the central hill country of Israel is brutal at times. So it would have been a nicer place. It's kind of like, I don't know, I mean, getting out of the city, so to speak, and getting to somewhere that's like more rural and pastoral.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody who's from the state of Michigan, where we live, it's all about going up north.
It's all about up north, right?
Nobody goes down south unless you're going way down south.
At least Ohio, no one wants that.
I mean, I hate to say it. No offense to our listeners from Ohio.
We just 10% of our listenership.
Offense given.
But here in Michigan, everybody goes up north.
Yeah.
And maybe it is kind of an up north.
And it is greener.
It is.
And
Yep. Less developed, a lot of trees, a little bit hillier.
I'll say sorry, Mom. She's from Ohio.
All right, ready to move on. The second half
Yeah.
of his poem, 9 through 15.
Is that on me? Am I reading now?
It's on you.
All right, 9 through 15.
Imagine like
4.
you're saying it to me.
I don't think I can do that.
You shouldn't.
Yeah, you just ruined this poem for me.
Yep.
Verse 9. You have ravished my heart, my sister, my bride. You have ravished my heart with a glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. How sweet is your love, my sister, my bride. How much better is your love than wine, and the fragrance of your oils than any spice. Your lips distill nectar, my bride. Honey and milk are under your tongue. The scent of your garments is like the scent of Lebanon. A garden locked is my sister, my bride. A garden locked, a fountain sealed. Your channel is an orchard of pomegranates, with all choicest fruits, henna with nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, and all the trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes with all chief spices, a garden fountain, a well of living water, and flowing streams from Lebanon. And so now he's kind of gone from extolling the various, physical virtues she has, to just saying, I am so in love with you. Like that idea that you have ravished my heart. It's like I am broken in my love for you. I'm overwhelmed by it. You're like, my love for you is consuming everything about me. What woman doesn't want to hear that, that he is so in love with me, that it's expressed in that way.
Yeah. And twice he refers to her as his sister, his bride.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you can literalize that and talk about incestuous relationship. Why is probably not a good idea, Sam?
Probably because they pet name, like, I mean, like guys call their girls babe. Well, they're not actually babies, right?
Right.
It's a term of affection, and so that would not be out of bounds for them.
And so, I don't know ancient culture well enough, but is it possible that like the only women that men really have any kind of close relationships are close family members, like your sisters? Like you talk to them, you see them without their veils or whatever. And is he saying, I want you to be like that? Like everybody else that I see on the street, I don't see like my sisters. And for you to become my bride, you are now becoming like one of these people that I am, intimately close to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it conveyed to me, like kinship. Like
Yeah.
we are close. We're like brother, sister. And that gap the gap between the average guy in that society and the average gal in that society would have probably been bigger than the gaps today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so to talk about her in sisterly language would have been not a creepy thing,
Right.
but yeah, like you said, an expression of intimacy.
Right.
And just like bride here, they're not married yet. It
Mhm.
doesn't seem right.
Right.
Well, yeah, especially because of this locked garden that we're going to get to.
Right. Yeah.
So bride is kinship spousal, sister is kinship familial. It's
Mhm.
kind of pushing in that direction, and it's hard to tell whether, to what extent it was a pet name. I'd have to, I guess, study sister language elsewhere, especially in poetry, to see when it's used and how it's used.
Yeah, and then there's like a little looser allowance of relationships, like half sisters, and like those sorts of things, where we see occasionally in the Bible where it, depending upon the context, it may or may not be allowed or forbidden. So it's like,
Right.
Again, we don't know who these two people actually are. Could it be a actual sibling in the sense of a half or a step or something like that? We don't.
Or like just-
Abraham and Sarah are like,
I mean, they're
Yeah.
close kin on
Right.
some level.
Yeah, and for Israel, I mean, you want to marry family.
Correct.
You want to marry fellow Israelites. So a sister can be a fellow Israelite, a daughter of Israel.
yeah, or even a tribal, like from your tribe,
Yeah, as opposed to the Ammonites, that wouldn't be sisters.
Right.
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 They would be others. They would be foreigners.
Yeah.
Well, technically, going all the way back to Lot. Sorry. We went over that in OT1 today. A lot of ickiness
Little
involved.
fresh.
Oh yeah, that is really gross. I love the fact that she smells good. Now again, we think about that like we use, toothpaste and mouthwash and deodorant and all these kind of great fragrances, but got to take ourselves back to the ancient world where, you didn't have the same level of hygiene products available to you. For her to have nice smelling breath and smell good, you have to really go to great lengths to make that happen. And so I kind of laugh about it, but at the same time, he's really saying something good about her.
Yeah.
I just love the way you smell. It's so beautiful to me.
Or especially when, like, when they're meeting up, right, she's going to prepare herself for those meetings.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
right.
she's going on a date. Right.
Mhm.
So in the same way
Shouldn't smell great all the time.
right. But that's the reality. She would
Right,
not
yeah.
have smelled great all the time.
Exactly.
But in the times they are, of course, coming together, seemingly she would gussy herself up and,
Right.
Including scents and oils and the like.
Yeah.
And they apparently kiss, right? Because he moves from the smell to kind of the taste.
Yeah.
In verse 11, and her lips distilling nectar and honey and milk under her tongue. So it's like they've kissed and he's tasted of her mouth. right,
Yeah.
as they've been involved with each other. And so, again, this seems to be intimacy together language.
Right.
Yeah,
We're-
I agree.
this together and then this apart. But probably, I think, one of the most important verses in the chapter, and even for trying to figure out what's the nature of the relationship
Mm-hmm.
to these two individuals in the book, is found in verse 12.
Yeah.
Right? A garden locked, a fountain sealed.
Yeah. It's like they have had intimate moments, even to the point of kissing, but that's it. Like I can't go any further than this because we're not married. We haven't, made vows or however a marriage ceremony would work back then. And so there's something about him. It's like, I can't cross this line yet. And that, again, I think that speaks to the nature of where their relationship stands at this point.
So to be clear, she's a virgin. I mean, that's what this lock garden's about.
I
That
would
seems to be
assume
an
that,
indication,
yes.
yes, for that.
Yeah.
And especially at least locked for him.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, she's not for anyone else. She has saved herself for him.
Right.
Right.
And so her she's beautiful, he's ravished by her, and she is set apart for him.
Yeah. And it's not like we should be thinking of like a chastity belt where she's wearing something with a lock and a key or something like that. This is a choice. She has chosen to wait for him. He's waiting for her. And I'm sure that family plays a part of that, maybe preventing them from being too in a situation where they could be too tempted. But there's something about this where it's like, you've waited for me and I'm waiting for you. I like that element.
Yeah, for me, I lean more in that direction. Like, I think it probably has to do with her virginity, but also it has to do with, like, he is mine and I'm his. Like, there's that fidelity to each other.
Yeah.
So it's locked, but only you have the key.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think that could be part of it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not dismissing the virginity part, but
Right.
it definitely is like talking about like they're for each other.
Yeah.
Period. Like there's no going outside that.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And this does begin a kind of mini section on garden.
Right.
Right, like starting in 12 and then culminating in 5:1. So this, she's a locked garden, and it continues with channel language, right?
Yeah. I
Her
don't know.
channel is an orchard of pomegranates with choicest fruits, nard and all that stuff, and the great smells.
Yes. Sorry, I don't know about the translation of channel.
Yeah.
I mean, even the
What do you
footnote says meaning of Hebrew uncertain. I don't know. It's
You agree it's uncertain, huh?
well, it's weird. It comes from a verb that means to send out, right, or to go out. And I don't know. For me, if you're talking about the things that go out, I think are like vines and plants and things like. And because he follows it up with like your things that go out are an orchard of pomegranates and fruits and things. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter a whole lot, but
Yeah.
sometimes I was when you don't know what a word means and the things they choose, I don't get like channel. I'm just not sure why they would choose that of all things.
So when you picture a channel, like if they're using the word channel, what do you think they're visualizing with that?
I don't know. Like I guess an offshoot of a river or something. I mean, I suppose.
Yeah, because maybe verse 15 is why they went there. Like it says, a garden fountain, a well of living water, and flowing streams from Lebanon. And maybe that stream language they're trying to pick up with the channel.
I don't know. I guess I'd rather have tributary or something.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, because I don't know. I don't know. And maybe it's a modern thing. Like when I think of channel, it's cemented. It's like it's very.
exactly.
You know what I mean? But that's not what we're getting at here. It's a tributary. It's an offshoot little stream thing from the main river. I don't know.
So this is why I like Greek better.
Stop it. Get
Nowhere in
outta
the New
here.
Testament do we have a note. The meaning of this word is uncertain. We know what those words mean.
Sure.
New Testament guys think they have all the answers.
Yeah.
Just when it comes to the New Testament, that's all I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
But the Old Testament, we just don't have that meaning of the Hebrew word is
No,
uncertain.
they choose words that are completely wrong to translate into Greek. The ones that make no sense in the context. But
Or
let's-
add words when there aren't words.
It's fine. Everything's fine. Listeners out there, we're not at all triggered.
But I think your point is well taken. Like
Yeah.
for us, channel has concrete
Yeah.
in it, and for them, it wouldn't.
Yeah.
Their channels would be like water that's diverted, maybe on purpose,
And
from
right.
a river to irrigate
Irrigation.
a
Yeah,
farm,
sure.
or a vineyard or a
And
garden.
I guess maybe that's the correct word, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have for me the connotation that I think is it doesn't conjure the right image in my head.
And so what we should be seeing is a stream of water that makes everything around it fertile.
Right.
And that's what she is like to him.
Right.
Which
Which is a pretty picture. I mean, it's a nice picture.
Yeah. And it kind of reminds you even like the new Jerusalem picture in Ezekiel with the
Yeah.
temple and the river and there's teeming with fish and everywhere around it the soil is fertile and great trees are, that's the way she is to him.
Yeah, I mean, really, not to talk about Egypt again, but it's like the Nile River.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It
Exactly.
overflows. All these great, like, fertilized, soil goes over, and then it's just so lush right there. But then you go, a mile outside it, and it's desert again.
Right.
And so it's just that's another like good image, I think.
Well, it would surprise me if there's a lot of crossover culturally
For
between
sure.
these two.
I mean, Egypt has love poetry that like is more explicit than this, to be sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not a problem going there. It's just funny that we keep going there.
Yeah.
Well, let's finish out this section. I'll read 16, and then you want to come in with the first part
5:1A,
of 5:1, and then Ron finish off the last part of 5:1.
Got it.
So it's going to be I'll read the part of the woman, Sam the part of the man, and Ron will chime in as the party of ladies.
The chorus.
The chorus.
So,
The posse.
all right. So, and so he's just described her as a garden, a place watered well with these tributaries or channels. And her response is an invitation to the wind, right? Awake, O north wind, and come, O south wind, blow upon my garden, that its fragrance may be wafted abroad. Let my beloved come to his garden, that he may eat its choicest fruits.
I come to my garden, my sister, my bride. I gather my myrrh and my spice. I eat my honeycomb with my honey. I drink my wine with my milk.
Eat, friends, drink, and be drunk with love.
Okay, so this kind of is the climactic moment in the poem,
Yeah.
right? And he has, with effusive language, described her beauty in a multi-sensory experience with the eyes and the nose, the smells and the sights and the tastes, and she is inviting the forces of nature to blow upon her body, her beauty, that he may be kind of smitten with a sensory overload of her love.
Yeah.
And it's an invitation for creation to amplify her invitation for him to come to her.
Yeah. It makes me think of like some images you see in like cartoons where the guy falls in love and he's just like floating towards her. Like he's just lost all of his buoyancy. He's just like caught up on the winds and drawn into her. It's like that kind of an image for me.
Yeah, I think of like, walking through a field and then as all the blossoms are sort of falling down around and just like it's so fragrant and as a slight breeze is coming through, like knocking him off the tree. Yeah. And that's exactly that's exactly what he's saying. Like, I'm coming into this garden and I just want to be, overwhelmed or overcome by you.
Yeah, exactly.
And apparently he's down with that.
Yes, he's about that life.
I come to my garden, my sister, my bride.
Yeah.
And he gathers the smells and he eats and he drinks. And is invitation accepted.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not sure about mixing wine and milk, but, that's fine. You do you, bro.
Never tried that before, so.
They say wine before milk, never sicker, or what?
As it curdles in your stomach.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
But no, there's just two things. Like the wine, obviously being, the fruit of the trees, and the milk, he goes back to, he talked about your lips, like honey and milk under your tongue. Yeah. And, of course, I don't know if the land flowing with milk and honey is in mind here or not. Yeah. I don't know. But the point is, like, it's just these things.
There's a reason that's a compliment.
Well, right. And actually, I do kind of see the wine and the milk because, like, like wine and cheese parties are a thing because the milk softens the tannins in the wine. This is why you put milk in tea or coffee or whatever. And so that's why you have wine and cheese parties. So I guess I could see combining a little bit of milk with wine.
Just got to whip it a little.
Just exactly. Shake it up a little.
And even the way you read that, Sam, the third verse, it was kind of ended up being a play on words in English that maybe wasn't there in Hebrew. I eat my honeycomb with my honey. As if she's his honey. This is probably not a nickname at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
It does
he's
work
eating
well
the
in
honeycomb with its honey inside of it. She's not the honey, but
I didn't even catch
in
that.
English
That's
it can kind of sound like that.
Yep. But yeah, it is the culmination. It's like, here we're describing our love. Let's now dive in. Let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy the love that we have, which I think is great because I think this helps us understand that this is a good thing. This is the reason it's in our Bible is because God himself would celebrate this. When he sees people all falling in love, he's like, I love seeing that because that's what I created you for. And so we shouldn't look at love as some sort of carnal or worldly or fleshly thing, but rather when we experience it the way God intended, God himself would celebrate that.
And so what's odd, he has made this grand romantic poetic gesture and she accepts and she issues an invitation, and you would expect the next thing would be, for them to come together. Instead, you hear from her friends. Wait a second, shouldn't you guys leave the room? But there's this encouragement.
Go.
Eat, friends, drink, and be drunk with love, right? And which is a reminder of, this is still part of the chase.
Yeah.
It's still of the come together. It's still the wedding party or the bridal party or the squad is still in the picture, encouraging their love, approving of their love, unlike those brothers.
I would say this for me, lends possible credence to it being an actual wedding play. Because like we have these things, this conversation going back and forth, and the like lavishing compliments on her, and she says, "Okay, sounds great. Come to my garden." She says, "I'm there," and then everyone's like, "Yep, woo!" It's, it's party time. It's like, and now I present you husband and wife, and everyone says, they start clapping, right? I don't know. I'm not saying that's exactly how it works, but that's the image that I get of like our modern sort of association with it.
Well, again, thousands of years later, as we're speculating as to what might be going on,
Right.
you might be right. That this. And if you think about like these multi-day celebrations of weddings, it could very well be that part of that is a romantic play that the people would watch. And this could be something that was at a wedding where and maybe the bride and groom would say these things, and the party's like, "Yeah, go guys, we're so happy for you."
Yeah.
And that's where it ends. Like
That section
dramatically shifts gears in 5-2, which we'll obviously discuss next week. But the culmination is the blessing of their friends, or at least her friends, right? I mean, you don't really hear about the guy's friends. Right. This is a very female-dominated book.
Yeah.
Right? It's her friends that matter. It's her mom that matters. It's her that speaks the most. He chimes in every once in a while. This is one of his bigger parts of the play.
Yep.
But he's really the only prominent male.
Yeah.
Solomon's there, in the background as a tempting alternative to her love for him. But he's the main guy, and the rest are females.
Well, and his part is to praise her beauty. I mean, it's like nowadays, the bride is the centerpiece, her dress, everything that's going on, and the guy is just there to make her look good. And so even to this very day, the bride is the centerpiece of the wedding. And so A Song of Songs does the exact same thing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of the After Class Podcast. After Class because
the best conversations happen
after class.
Move.
Thank you again for listening to the After Class Podcast. ACP is hosted by Sam Long, John Nugent, and Ron Peters. Audio production is provided by Drew Nyquist, and social media is managed by Darren Harris.